Be seated. Well, yes, good morning, and congratulations having made it through all of the Christmas festivities. And so we come to this piece, but for us, just a reminder, so Christmas is not just a day of celebration. It's a season. There are 12 days of Christmas, right? That leads us up until the celebration of Epiphany. So we don't kind of take down everything. We now recognize after the Word of God, the Son of God has broken into our lives. We have 12 days to absorb it, to kind of allow it to make its impact on our minds and our hearts and our lives. And that's so important for us because for us as people of faith, we celebrate the coming of the Son of God in human flesh, the incarnation of God in human flesh, which was it is such a mind-blowing experience for us. And yet, as we absorb that truth for us, then it also says things about us. So we learn not just who Jesus is, but we learn who we are. We learn our identity, because as Jesus becomes flesh, we become his kin, his family. He says in the Gospel of John, it says, he came to his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or husband's will, but born of God. We, born of God. St. Paul says in Galatians, he says, because you are his sons or his children, God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, and that Spirit calls out in us, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but God's child. And since you are his child, God has made you also an heir. And so we learn not just about who Jesus is in this season of Christmas, but we learn about who we are. And that identity, that new identity is determinative for us. It changes the way that we think about ourselves, the way that we treat ourselves, and the way that we treat others. I was doing my Christmas shopping, and thankfully, most of my Christmas shopping was able to be online. So, I've never done so much with Amazon ever before in my whole life. I don't know, between Amazon and Wikipedia, I don't think I could live anymore without those two resources. But not everything could I get done on Amazon. And so I did have to go to some stores. And I was noticing in one of the department stores that you go into this section, and there's, on the one hand, there's this section of fragrances, perfumes and all of those things. And on the other side, there's all of the jewelry that's there. And so if you go to the fragrances, you can smell samples, and there are things that you can pick up. And over in the jewelry section, there are all of this jewelry that you can look at, you can handle it, you can touch it, you can put it on and see how it looks. All of those things are there. But then I noticed that that's not all they got. They also have these other things, but they're in the glass case. And they are locked. And if you want to see those things, then you have to have one of the sales clerks come over and unlock it for you, and then they can show it to you. And then I noticed another thing. The difference between those two things was the number on the price tag. So the ones that were out there where you could paw all over them, and you could handle them, and then you could put them on and all of those things, the prices were cheaper. In some cases, just cheap. But the other part you couldn't get to, and it was locked away. And then when they did bring it out, there was careful, watchful eye over it. It has to do with value. It has to do with what's cheap and what's expensive. And so on the cheap side of things. They didn't particularly watch, and I'm sure that as people pick things up, and I'm sure that they would lose some to theft. People stick them in their pocket or in a wallet, and it was so it'd just be gone, but no big deal. But if they lost the other ones, that would be a very big deal. Well, we import those same kinds of values into our relationships with ourselves and other people. So if we see ourselves as cheap, then it translates into how we treat ourselves, the behaviors that we use to think about who we are. And if we think about other people as cheap, then it's easy for them just to be handled and used for whatever it is that we want for the moment. But if they disappear, or if they're tawdry or in some way inconvenient, then we just if they disappear, we just don't even know. But if things are valuable, we'll look for them. We'll turn the house upside down for them. And so it is with how we look at other people. If we see them as people who are there for our own uses, and we can use or discard them and just kind of move on to the next thing, or if we see them as made in the image of God, as image bearers, and we'll turn over everything in our lives in order to be able to find them if they go lost, because they're important to us. This truth, this bedrock truth about Christmas, tells us that we are of divine lineage, that we are born of God, we're His children, and so we see ourselves as royalty, made of the royal family, and we see each other as royalty. And we treat each other, or try to learn how to treat each other with that kind of dignity and respect, knowing that those lives are not only precious, but worthy of honor for us, no matter what sometimes the packaging looks like. Chris Hall, who was here not too long ago, did a retreat for us, and he said that in cultures where people forget or don't know that people are made in the image of God, he said, people die. It's true. It is, as we are made in the image of God, we're His image bearers, we recognize that we are royalty, sons and daughters of the Most High King, and we have a job to do. A few weeks, maybe a month ago, I stumbled across an article, and it was about a woman, Sarah Culberson, who is a biracial woman who grew up adopted into a white family. So she was adopted when she was about 1 year old, and she had a couple of other biological siblings in the family, biological to her adoptive parents. So they're all white, but she was biracial. And so then as she was growing up, people were constantly kind of asking her, so where are you from? Why are you different from your family? And as she got older, that question became more and more important for her, until finally, when she was 18, she had kind of a crisis. She'd watch a film about adoption and how there were children that weren't wanted, and that threw her into a crisis of her identity. Was she wanted by her birth parents? And so with the support of her adoptive parents, she started this process of trying to find out, so who am I? She just grew up as this little girl in this small West Virginia town, and she had no idea where it was that she had come from. 10 years it took before she was able to make any progress in finding out her identity. And she got a phone call finally from her uncle, who was in Sierra Leone. And he told her about who she was. She was the daughter of the paramount chief of the Mende tribe in Bumpe, Sierra Leone. She was a princess. And it sounds like a tribe is for a village, and so that's a community that's there. But this tribe was the premier tribe of the tribes in that area, and it was the largest of all of the ethnic groups and accounted for a third of the population of Sierra Leone. So to be a princess of that many people, that's a big deal. And then if you know other things about Sierra Leone, you know they are rich in natural resources. Diamond mines, gold mines, all kinds of natural resources from Sierra Leone. And so for a while when she learned that, she said, I'm a princess. I'm a princess. Start treating me like a princess. And all of the wealth and all of the privilege and all of the honors and all of that kind of goes to your head, until she learned more about the history of Sierra Leone. And she learned that because of all of the wealth, that her family had been dispossessed by despotic political leaders. And just 2 years before she was able to make her first visit, these brigands, rebellion soldiers, training little boys to carry machine guns, military machine guns and machetes, going through villages and wiping out their citizens. Tens of thousands of people died, and these little boys with machetes that would cut off the limbs, the arms and legs of others to intimidate them when the election came around. So when she went to see her first visit for her people, she saw little children scarred, and some walking on crutches, missing a leg or an arm, and other adults who were missing a hand because they'd voted for the wrong candidate. She said in the article, "My only guidance of what a princess was what I saw in the movies. But it's really about responsibility. It's about walking in my great-grandfather's and my grandfather's footsteps and what they've done for the country. I realize that's my role as a princess, to keep things moving forward for my people. No longer for this little West Virginia girl, those people, my people." And so she was developing a career as an actress and a dancer. And she put all of that on the back burner. And she continued to go back to Sierra Leone. And she established a foundation. And she worked with others to build schools and healthcare clinics, to be able to provide masks, to provide drinking water that was clean, and to provide sanitary napkins for women and addressing other women's issues for women who just really didn't have much. Identity is crucial. Who you know yourself to be is critical, because from it flows your destiny. Identity means destiny. Who it is that we are leads to the kinds of things that we do, the kinds of goals that we have, the way that we treat other people, the way that we see ourselves, our vocation and our calling, all comes from our identity. And it flows naturally to how it is that we give ourselves. We live in a world in which people do not know who they are. And it would be very easy for someone like her to be able to, after having seen the reality of what Sierra Leone is like, to be able to have just made a tourist visit and then said, well, thank you very much. I'll put princess on my resume and move on. But those were her people. She was their princess. And she had a calling to join her people in the struggle for life and liberty, for health and promise. So, on this Christmas celebration, during this Christmas season, these 12 days of Christmas leading up to Epiphany, this opportunity for us to set aside for a bit all of the stuff that has to do with our celebration of the holidays, and to reflect on who this Christ child is, what it means for him to have come and join us, and what it means for who we are, our identity as his image bearers in the royal line, called to be his people, using everything that we have to be able to serve him.